The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
At least 92 have been killed in the two terrorist attacks in reality, in Oslo, Norway, and the surrounding area. I'm sure, Lewis, you were paying attention to this story over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
The individual's name, he's 32 years old. His name is Anders Behring Breivik. He had been living with his mother. Every indication is that he is a right-wing extremist, and every indication that we've seen from conservative media in the United States is that this was some kind of Muslim Islamic terrorism. No surprise there at all, and I'll get into detail of that, but it was written on the wall, Lewis, that was going to be the angle until all evidence pointed in a different direction that we were going to hear.
Right. And, I mean, in most people's minds, when they even hear the word terror, it's automatically equated to some type of Islamic
a person who has
fundamentalist.
darker skin than someone from Norway normally would. That's for sure.
Right.
7 were killed when a blast ripped through Oslo's government headquarters, and then 85 were killed at a mass shooting at a nearby youth camp. Dozens more were hospitalized. There are actually pictures, Lewis, of Anders Behring Breivik, the 32-year-old shooter, from a helicopter, from a police helicopter above this island youth camp, where it is clearly a scene of complete terror. And he is holding a gun and just taking fire at people. And it literally is, it just seems like a nightmare situation. It was a nightmare, except sadly it was real for a lot of the people at that youth camp.
Right.
And there are two interesting directions that this could go. And I think we're already seeing which way it will go. We're already seeing the best and the worst from media and government as a result of this incident. On the one hand, you remember, Lewis, when Sweden had their suicide incident, a suicide bombing took place in Sweden, and we discussed in detail. Well, in the U.S., many conservatives like to say Europe is all liberal until they get attacked, and then everything changes. And we said, well, let's keep an eye and see actually what happens in Sweden. And we actually did not see a neoconservatization of their security policy. Now, we have already heard from a number.
Also, I mean, I'm pretty sure no one died in that incident, right?
Other than the
bomber.
The suicide bomber, that's correct.
Yeah.
This is a very different incident. However, we're already hearing from a number of Norwegian elected officials that times like this are not the times for less democracy. They are the times for more democracy. And that's already been criticized by many American neoconservatives, and we'll see what direction it goes. The way that Breivik got to the youth camp is really pretty incredible, and I don't want to go ahead and fault anyone because nobody knew what was going on at this point. But he told the guards that he was on the island to carry out a routine check on security after the Oslo attack. He was ferried by boat out to the island, where, as we know, he opened fire and simply began shooting haphazardly at teenagers.
He was disguised as a police officer.
That's right. And he legally had a Glock pistol, a rifle, and a hunting gun. Apparently, he had a number of other weapons in his car, including machine pistols. 6 days prior to the incident, he had posted on his Twitter account his only Twitter message ever, which was a version of a quote by John Stuart Mill. "One person with a belief is equal to the force of 100,000 who have only interests." My real concern with this, because the reporting is widely available, is the media situation surrounding it. And everyone's first guess about the perpetrators was it was Islamist radicals, and it was dead wrong. And we see this happen very, very often. Not only that, we see a complete reticence to even admit that anything was a so-called right-wing attack. And Breivik has been known to write posts on a number of these right-wing internet forums in Norway, where he's described himself as a nationalist. He has written a bunch of different screeds critical of Muslims. And, you know, the thing is, Fox News doesn't even care that this is not actually Islamist terror. First, they reported a couple of times that this may be connected to that. However, eventually they realized that it wasn't, but you know what? They still were talking to people as if that's the biggest concern. The biggest concern, Lewis, it doesn't matter that this particular incident wasn't Islamist terror, but let's just keep talking about Islamist terror. And this is not a parody clip. This is not Saturday Night Live. This is real. Take a listen to this.
We're not properly prepared for this kind of thing.
That's right, Greg. You've heard the term the exception that proves the rule. This wasn't Islamic terrorism. It's one of the first instances since Oklahoma City when terrorism on this scale was not Islamic. But steps you could take to defend your people and your government and your society against Islamic terrorism would also come in handy against lone wolves, as this is turning out to be. It just looks like the Norwegians didn't happen to take them, nor did they approach terrorism in what, frankly, was a serious manner, I'd say.
Okay.
Right. As long as you protect yourself against Islamic terrorist threats,
you will be
protected against all terrorist threats.
What's incredible is I just played 28 seconds of that clip, Lewis, and in those 28 seconds, do you realize the amount of nonsense that was covered? We included in that clip, even though this wasn't Islamist terror, that's the concern, and that's what we need to be prepared for. We included this was another lone wolf, completely disconnected from anything else, and we included in there that Norway does not take seriously issues of terror. So we managed to include basically the full suite of conservative talking propaganda points on terror in only 28 seconds. It almost warrants congratulations to Fox News for being able to stuff that all in to 28 seconds, does it not?
It requires a lot of skill.
Even though, unfortunately for the narrative that we here on Fox News like to further, this wasn't Islamic terror, we should still talk about Islamic terror, and we should also mention that violence and terror, in this case, were yet another lone wolf, completely disconnected from the broader context of right-wing violence and terror that we constantly see now, and not representative of any ideology beyond this one crazy individual. The 2-minute clip, which I would not even dare play for you, because if we did that, we would have to warn you to get the children out of the room. 2-minute clip. They mentioned the term Islamic terror 15 times, roughly, about every 10 seconds. This wasn't Islamic terror. Imagine how often they'd be mentioning it if it was Islamic terror. It would be like Rudy Giuliani. Noun, verb, Islamic terror.
It'd be story of the year.